and welcome back to the Above Board podcast. And it's such a special day because I got my buddy Rich back. What's up, dude?
Every day is special. Every day is special with Rich.
I used to have these like long intros where, especially when we have guests and I say all these things, but it's so nice and comfortable to just be able to have a conversation with you today, buddy.
Just two friends talking to each other from their houses, 3 houses down.
Yeah, exactly. Can I share with you the gift I got you? I'm going to do this for the audience.
Oh,
I called you
got
the other day. Well, I called you the other day. You didn't answer. Thanks a lot, by the way.
Yeah,
and
okay.
so I got you this gift. It's from this company called Liftmas, like Christmas, but Liftmas. And I wanted it to get here in time for 4th of July. It did not. But this is the shirt. For people not seeing this on YouTube, it says "Right to Bear Arms," and it's George Washington jacked with his biceps.
Exactly how he probably was. I love that shirt.
What's even better is I got one for myself. They're not matching because I thought that was too aggressive.
No,
but mine says, instead of John F. Kennedy, it says Strong F. Kennedy, and it's JFK with his biceps out and like tattoos on his arms. It's so fun.
I love it, and I'm a big. Actually, it's so weird. I've developed a recent obsession with George Washington. So, he was a really cool guy. So I love that. Thank you. That's awesome.
I'm like really happy. Weird wooden teeth that he had. That was like.
I wonder if that's true. Do you think that's true, or do you think that's myth? Like chopping down the cherry tree. I wonder if that's legit.
Can I tell you that I'm almost positive that it's true, but my source is the comedian Shane Gillis. So he does a whole bit about it. So I don't think that's a good source, but I'm going to look it up right now. True. Well, it was like horse teeth and like wooden teeth. That's what they did back then, right?
What?
Yeah.
Wooden. Oh, did George Washington have a British accent?
Ooh.
That's an interesting question. Do you think he did?
I think so.
I mean, he wouldn't he have had to?
People are like, what the heck is happening on this podcast right now?
Here you go. Legend has it that Washington had wooden teeth, but historians state that is not true. The appearance of his dentures may have looked wooden, particularly after they had been stained, but wood was not used in constructing any of his dental fittings.
It's even worse, though. He used horse teeth.
I'm looking.
That's the next thing you need to Google is, did he use horse teeth?
I'm looking. No, I'm looking at it right now. Sorry, everybody.
His mouth is closed in this photo. His mouth is...
Washington's personal life. Well, Washington certainly suffered from dental problems, and he had multiple sets of dentures composed of ivory, gold, lead, and human teeth. Oh. Wood was never used in Washington's dentures, nor was it commonly employed by dentists in his era.
So no horse teeth. So I'm just making up. I'm just falsifying information.
No.
But I think everyone did learn something here today, 3 minutes into the Above Board podcast. Not risk, regret, and resilience, but they learned about George Washington's teeth.
But speaking about having to have, a very difficult dental journey, you could probably incorporate risk, regret, and resilience into that. So yeah, today we wanted to talk about risk, regret, and resilience. And I think that it is a subject, or those are words that are definitely can create a certain kind of feeling in people. Can I read you something that I wrote in my journal? So this is very unedited and very kind of not cleaned up.
Yeah.
But I wrote, this is the first time I've read it out loud, so excuse me if it's disjointed. What makes a weak person strong? I put resistance, work, effort, progressive difficulty, and challenge. What makes a strong person weak? Laziness, no effort, ease, minimizing challenge. And I thought to myself when I wrote that, and I don't know why it popped into my head to write it, but I thought about, strength and you can look at strength as a symbol, like emotional strength or spiritual strength, or you can look at it literal, physical strength is what most people think of when they think of strength. How much can you lift? Hey, how much you benching, bro? And no matter what, when you want to talk about any kind of strength, whether it be emotional strength, psychological strength, physical strength, I think that it's about dealing with resistance, effort, work, and progressive difficulty and challenge, right? If you lift the same weight 10 times every day, you might initially have an increase in strength. But then when that weight becomes easier because you develop strength, If you crave ease, or if you crave comfort, then at that point, you no longer grow. You no longer get stronger. So if a 20-pound curl is difficult for somebody and they can only do 5 reps, but over the period of 6 months, they can now do 10 reps. But then they say, you know what? I don't want to do any more than that. I'm just going to stay right where I'm at. And they maintain that 20 pounds and those 10 reps, no growth will occur. That makes probably sense to everybody who's listening to this. So it would be no different if you talk about professional growth, growth as an entrepreneur, financial growth, growth as a person, growth as a parent. And I looked at growth and getting stronger, and I thought to myself, what are some of the components of that? And I think when you grow, you have to have some sort of risk tolerance. So in your world of financial growth, if I said to you, I want to grow financially, John, but I want 0 risk, you would probably tell me, I'm imagining from looking how CandorPath manages my money, that that's not going to happen. There has to be some risk, right? You always say, hey, the market's doing great, this week, but that doesn't mean it's going to continue to do great. I looked at regret, and I know that sounds maybe like an interesting place to come from with growth, but I looked at regret as something that if we have to overcome, or something that we have to face, especially when we want to talk about growth. Again, using the financial example, I can regret having sold my Apple stock at $12.38 way back in the 90s. But if I focus on that, then that's going to hit me in the risk, and I'm just going to stay in that zone. And then ultimately resilience, that when you're challenged, when you go through difficult times, when you're having progressive overload or progressive load or progressive difficulty, you develop resilience. Some people look at resilience, and we talked about resilience before in another podcast, but that's kind of where I wanted to come at this from. And I wanted to talk to you, and almost kind of, we can interview each other back and forth. But I think these are things that people either struggle with or don't know how to get more of, or don't know how to. So struggle with regret. How do I face risk? And how can I look at the challenges in my life as not, some intimidating thing that's going to weigh me down, but as an opportunity for me to get stronger?
Do you ever look back at your life and I mean, I guess you did give an instance like joking with buying a stock and not holding it, but do you look back and have regret about not taking more risk?
Yes. I think that I looked back and said, I was surprised at myself when I look back at my old journals, and I left the safety of the hospital executive journey that I was on. There's no doubt in my mind that the path that I was on, the degrees that I was getting, the professional experience that I had, by now I probably would have been a hospital CEO or chief nursing officer in probably a mid-sized to large hospital. I certainly have the skill set. Those are the people that I consult and work with. So I have the acumen, I have the skill set. And there's a safety involved in that, because you have, the executive umbrella or parachute, you have the benefits, you have all those kinds of things. And I think that is probably, I have the blessing and the curse of being raised by the Depression generation, because I had older parents, and I'm 57. My parents were born in 1930. So, they were little kids, the height of the mid of the Depression, or coming out of the Depression. So, and they were poor. So, my dad and my mom always kind of drilled into my head, really, it wasn't about education. My one brother is highly educated and was a educator, and my other brother was in the military, and also, he has his degree and all those kinds of things. But they really drove more into us, get a job, get a secured place to work, that kind of thing. So I think I was always afraid of being an entrepreneur. I think that scared me. So when I stepped away from the hospital to join the consulting firm that I started working with, and traveling and doing all those things, that was probably the biggest risk professionally I've ever taken, because I was jumping into unknown waters. I no longer had the security of the place where I had been for a decade and was moving up the ladder. My CEO told me I was crazy, because, you're in line to be this and in line to be that. I far surpassed what I would have made at that point. But yeah, I do look back and wonder, should I have been more aggressive with certain things? Should I have taken more chances? And I saw an interview recently with people that are 100, and they ask them, what are the things that you wish you would have done, wouldn't have done, those kinds of things. And they all said they wish they would have taken more chances, and they wish they wouldn't have worried about stupid things. And I think I probably look back on my life, and like most people, I think I worried about a lot of stupid things. And I do have some regret that I didn't take a few more risks. Of course, I don't know where that would have gone. I could have fallen flat on my face. But I look at people that are younger than I am, I won't use names, but like famous people that you see in the media or influencers that are, even when you watch YouTube and you see these 25-year-old millionaire living in Dubai, day in the life, and you're like, man, how did this guy do it? And things I don't know about: drop shipping, e-commerce, crypto. It feels like a lot of them, but some of them really had to grind and work hard. And I'm amazed by that. I actually wrote in my journal, I'm 57. I wonder if you ever reach a point where it becomes I am 57. I wonder if the option of starting over is no longer on the table. I wonder if my ability to, or people that are my age, and I know we have a lot of people listening that are in that part of their life, is this it? Can I do more? Can I become more? Can I, are there examples for me? Is there a mentor who started off when they were almost 60 and that was when they made their most money or had their most success? So I do think about that. I do wonder if a lot of people, out of their fear of taking a risk, whether it's a risk of asking somebody out or a risk of trying a new job or a risk of going back to school, if that worry or that fear of it is what holds them back. So yeah, I definitely think I have some regrets that I even look at you, and I think, wow, man, look what he's accomplished in his 30s. I was nowhere near that. So but I'm not a jealous person. I'm more of a cheerleader. Like I look at people that I love that are successful. I'm like, yes, like I always tell you, I can see, you with that skyscraper with CandorPath in the front of the building, and this is your building, and I want to be there, when we cut the ribbon, I know that for you. And I think that's great.
That's very kind of you. I appreciate that. I don't know if you follow Gary Vaynerchuk at all.
Yeah, I do.
He's so funny sometimes because he'll say, like, there's people that spoof him and that will do like parody videos of him, and they're like, bro, you're like 96 years old. Like you could start a career right now and drop in Amazon dropship. You could go flip stuff at garage sales. You're 104. And basically his whole thing is it's never too late.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I kind of agree. I don't think 57 is, in today's world, 57 is still very young, in my opinion. When you think about, so take away career aspirations for a moment, but you just look at like life in general, where longevity is. Yeah. If you live to 90 to 100 years old, which still like that would be a long, and a healthy 90 to 100, we don't want to be like sick and bedridden that whole time. But let's say you live that long, there's a lot of years left to do things that are providing meaning to you. And I get the good fortune of working with folks that are in their 60s and 70s that still work, not out of financial obligation because they have to, but they do it because they found the thing that they love doing. And you know what? It's still hard work though. Like that, make no mistake about any of this. It's not like you can just uncover some Amazon hack where you can be drop shipping. Like all this stuff takes work. It just simply does. But they've curated a skill over decades that they now have that allows them to move in confidence in how they deliver advice and coach people or speak for a living like you do. And because they love it, it carries them through, and it doesn't, I'm sure days still feel like work for them, but the good outweighs the bad. And they're only at that phase of life, you're doing the things that you like doing with work. And that's why I always tell people, like on the financial aspect, it's let's make sure that you can retire at whatever that target age is. And if you keep working past that age, it's only because your choice, because you're enjoying it, you want to. And you can give everybody the middle finger and walk away tomorrow if all of a sudden it stops being fun.
Absolutely.
So I don't know.
There's the old saying. I just want to interject into that. What do they say? work feels like play, it's no longer work, right? When
For
you just
sure.
love it. No,
And
finish your thought.
I think about when we started CandorPath, I was 30 years old. And
Wow.
I can remember, and relative to this conversation, you'd be like, "Oh, that's so young to start a company." I remember being 30 and being like, "I should have done this 5 years ago." Matt and
Wow.
I literally, it's all scalable. It's scalable to the
Were you
situation.
scared? Were you, because I knew you very well at the time. I mean, I can literally remember being outside getting my mail. You were in your Infinity, I believe, and your old Infinity
Which
that
sounds
Luke
so
says
cool.
he
It's such an
still.
old beater. That thing was so
It was
bad.
so cool though. Luke says that's your coolest car, by the way. That was Uncle Johnny's coolest car. Anyway,
He
I
never saw
remember
my
you had.
95 T-Bird. He never saw.
I never saw that either. I have to see a picture of that. But I remember you had a stack of papers and there was a bunch of stuff you were doing. And I remember we were talking and you seemed hyped. You didn't seem, I didn't get fear from you. I got like you were, it was kind of like the difference between two people who are going to bungee jump. If somebody dared me to bungee jump, money would have to be involved. Like you'd have to say, I'll give you $5,000 a month. There's no way that on my own I would bungee jump. There's literally 0% chance.
Yeah.
Then another person would be like, oh bro, I've always wanted to do this and they can't wait. I felt like you were more that guy. Like you were more excited about it. And I know that it was from a place you knew your profession, you knew what you were doing. You have a great partner. I mean, you guys, you're literally two great partners. Your wife, who's a great partner, but also Matt, who's just a phenomenal partner. And you guys are just this perfect combination. So I never saw I know there was moments that you were probably a little worried or fearful, whatever, but man, you just seemed pretty hyped about it. And, you're younger than me by 20 years. Do you, how's your risk tolerance? And do you have any regret?
It's much higher. It's much higher than it used to be. So I've learned to adapt and have a higher risk tolerance. I think inherently I was more conservative. I went into a profession, financial services. I became a CFP. I'm helping people manage risk, and we're investing, to avoid, but eliminate some of the downside of when we go through market volatility. Like it was conditioned in my brain to be a little more risk averse. But like when I started CandorPath, so here's a quote that I heard from a podcast I listened to. I wish I could give credit where it's due. I can't remember who said it, but it was like they were basically kind of echoing. This person was talking about their journey, and I regretted for a while, and this was me too. Like I regretted for a while that I didn't start sooner, that I didn't make that leap of faith and start my company sooner. But then I came soon to realize like the risk of starting just a little too soon would have been the difference between success or failure of my company versus like the worst case scenario was I waited maybe a few more years longer than I probably should have. But so what? I was more prepared. And
Timing.
now I
Yeah.
think that about myself as it relates to CandorPath, and I'll talk about Matt in a second. But I think about that for me. I was like, all right, I was in the industry by the time I was 30. I had already been in the industry for 9 years.
That's
So
crazy.
had I started when I was 4 years into the industry, there's just a lot I didn't know still. And so maybe like you have an over confidence in your ability to do certain things at a younger age. I look back at it now and I'm like, at the moment, I was like, I should have done this sooner. But now I'm at a place where I'm like, it was the right time at the right phase of life. And that speaks to why I didn't have the level of like anxiety or stress around risk that you would perceive it. Whereas like Matt and I, this is why him and I get along so well. I think we tend to balance each other out.
Yeah.
Matt was, I mean, I wish he was on this podcast today because he could speak to this better than I could, but like he was infinitely more stressed than I was. It was such a big change for him. And I would say that he's also not inherently a risk taker. Maybe our profession beats that into us. Like same as yours, Rich, like your profession, like you've seen so many things in people's, so many different things happen in the medical field in an ER that like it makes you think about risk a different way. And so I think inherently we were not risk takers. And so like for Matt, though, he was much more anxious and I wouldn't say not confident, just like you had that underlying feeling of stress. Whereas it was like, I was excited about it, but I liked the idea of let's build a brand. Let's build something that means something for us and for our client community. And he was too. And so you sensed the exuberance and excitement far outweighed any type of stress that I had. I I was so driven by it, and I loved it. And yeah, go ahead. You looked like you were
No,
gonna ask something.
I just feel like that's, it's so funny to me thinking 9 years by the time you were 30. So it's like, in a way, you're right. Timing is everything. Cause I don't know if I would wanted to trust my financial future to like a 14-year-old. So I mean, it's like you would be like a kid to some people. I mean, you've always carried yourself. You've always carried yourself with a much, the term an old soul. I mean, you've always been that way. And I mean, I'm a good friend of yours. I'm 20 years older than you. I mean, there's not a lot of, I always think like that would be like me being friends with somebody who's, 77, which of course I would be happy to be, but that would be interesting. It would, to me, I'm like, wow, that's a big difference, So
yeah. Well, that speaks to, oh, sorry, go ahead. I mean,
no, go.
I was just going to say that speaks to being young in my industry. One of the R's for today that you talked about was resilience. I had to learn how to adapt to situations. I had to learn how to be the young person in an environment where the average age of an advisor is like 60 years old. We go to these conferences, and I was in many cases younger than their children. Like these advisors that and in some cases they had like grandkids that were my age. I'm not even joking. There's like 70 something year old advisors that had grandkids that were close to my age at this time in life. I'm like 21 going to these conferences, and I would say the resilience piece, the one thing that I'm maybe good at would be I just wake up every day and I lace up and I go play. Like I get out there, like I get on the court and I do I would say I have self-doubt, I have anxiety, I have stress, I have all the things. I mean, this whole podcast is a journey and documentation of us talking about those things. So anyone who's listened to us for a while has heard me share these feelings before. I have all those feelings too. But the one thing that I will say, I get up and I do it again. Like I have a bad day and I sulk about it and I eat a pint of ice cream and I do whatever that night. But I wake up the next day and I don't eat ice cream, but fine.
Yeah, I was going to say, you do nothing.
I'm using that as an analogy.
You do push-ups.
Yeah,
you do push-ups. You do burpees when you're upset. I feel like regret sometimes is a lie we keep telling ourselves because we've conditioned ourselves to think negatively.
Yeah.
And I think it's the human brain, as my understanding of psychology, my limited understanding, the human brain is that we're toggled to be negative more than we are toggled to be positive, just in general, everybody across the board. And while certain people are more or less that, I think regret is part of that programming in our mind. Because if you think about the value of regret, not high. I mean, certainly we would want to reflect on our mistakes to not repeat them. Mm-hmm. But I almost feel like regret is a standstill. Regret means you sit there and you mull and why did I do that? That was so dumb. And I'd be so much further ahead if I wouldn't have cashed in my 401k and bought this. And I should have never, gotten into this relationship. That's regret. It's kind of a spin. You're in a circle of just beating yourself down. Whereas maybe it's better to look at your mistakes. And that's why I find journaling to be so powerful with regret, because I will sometimes journal my regrets. I'll be like, why did I do this? And well, let me list all the good things that came out of it. And then all of a sudden I'm like 7 things in and I'm like, oh, I mean, maybe this wasn't such a bad idea. That bad stock deal that I did, that's what got me to go reach out to so-and-so, who then got me onto this, which then enabled me to go in this direction. This marriage didn't work out, but I have this amazing kid from it. So I mean, there's all these different things that we can do. And I find that for those of you who are struggling with regret, meaning that you can't get out of your own way, right? You are playing a recording of something that's happened in the past and allowing that to dictate your future. And unless you're going to use that recording to learn from, it's time to delete it and record over it. That's a very old school way. Like back in the day when we had cassette tapes, we'd record, something off the radio. or VHS, you'd record something and then you'd record over it when you found something better. And I kind of think that that's regret. Regret is a recording that you're playing. And rather than say delete it, I'd say record over it. Whatever you're saying to yourself that you're being like, turn, I wish I wouldn't have into, because I did, this is what I learned. And it's a different way.
I really enjoy that. I would like, speaking back to my situation for a moment, that I think I did that. I think I'm actually recognizing in this conversation that I did that with starting CandorPath. Like I can remember those first couple of years going to Matt and I'm like, my only regret is we didn't do this 5 years sooner. And I used to beat myself up about that early on, just like we should have done this sooner. And now as time has gone on, I can look back confidently and be like, I'm separated. We're 6 or 7 years separated from that decision. So there's time that has helped with that. But then there's also just this perspective of things have come up in my career over the last number of years where I laugh about how not capable I would have been had that come up when I was in my mid 20s. Like certain situations come up with, just work stuff that happens. And you're like, man, I would not have been. I'm barely capable of dealing with that. This new thing that I didn't know was going to present itself as a business owner now, let alone had this happen to me in 25, I would have crumbled under that pressure. And so I do think you just kind of like can mentally change things. For me though, something I want to mention is I don't put a lot of I've been able to kind of adjust my thinking with the starting of CandorPath, but I don't put a lot of pressure on regret, but I do have a lot of micro regrets. I don't know if that's like worth mentioning here, but I have a lot of micro regrets. Yeah, meaning little stuff like, man, you know what? I should have gotten up today at 6 a.m. and worked out before. Like I should have done this to feel more productive about my day. Or gosh, that conversation didn't go the way I'd hoped it would. Like I should have said this.
What percentage of days do you feel like I crushed it? I did everything I could do. I was max. I did my best.
If I don't know, if you want me to be honest, it's very few.
Yeah,
it's few.
Can I tell you this? Can I tell you mine?
Yeah,
very, very few. So I wonder if that's worth examining, right? Because if I said to you, how many workouts have you had that you felt very good about? What percentage?
Most of them.
Interesting. So what is it that you're applying? Because I would answer the same. So I'm working through this with you. Okay. So what is it that we're applying, doing, or thinking during our workouts that we are not applying, doing, or thinking towards our daily accomplishments as parent, husband, financial advisor, consultant, whatever it is that you're listening to out there? What is it? That's worth digging into. What is it? What are the things? So I'm gonna go first. A consistency of something. There's a consistency with my pattern of working out. There's a consistency in the body parts that I do. I know that, I've got to do 3 days on, 1 day off. So there's a consistency. I'm not saying there's not other things, but let me just cook on this. There's a consistency. Number two, I track it. I'm very specific. I know that last back workout, I went up to 72 pounds on the handle row. So I know that. There's also a good workout is the flexibility of my elbow hurts today. So I'm not going to do the bar curls. I'm going to do hammer curls because that puts less pressure on it. So consistency, flexibility, tracking it. Yeah.
I think presence. I think like when you're in the gym, you're zoned in, you're listening to music, you're very present because I know you. Like you're probably not going through the motions in most workouts. And I have bad workouts.
I know nobody.
Yeah.
Luke always teases me because my wife goes to the gym and she's like, oh, Georgette, she's getting married. And oh, Frank, he just retired. And Luke's dad, do you know anybody's name in the gym? I go, I know Ali, the manager. It's my bro. I talk to him all the time. That's it. I have my headphones in.
You're locked in. You can go in the zone for that moment. And again, I was going to say, I have bad workouts, but even on bad workouts, I still feel proud of myself on I actually feel sometimes more proud of myself on a bad workout because I'm like, you know what? I pushed through this. Not like an injury, but like.
So why don't we feel proud of ourselves when we have a day where we weren't as successful, but we know we pushed ourselves and we showed up?
I was going to say, I think I was gonna say, I think it's a little bit of presence, like your ability to stay hyper focused in a workout. It's for me, I can do that too. And then I'm like, well, am I applying that everywhere in life? And a lot of times for me, it's I feel
Hmm.
the shortcoming in that day was like, I didn't spend enough time with my kids. I went really hard on my workout today. I went really hard in my work area of life, but not in my home life. And so this imbalance, I think maybe it's a little bit of balance, which you always say it's really hard to find balance in life. It doesn't really exist. It's that feeling of imbalance at the end of the day where I'm like, I didn't do enough here. And so to be honest, I'm journaling too. I fall in and out of love with journaling. I go months not doing it, and I go months doing it. And I do the 5-minute journal. And one of the things is, what are 3 things that would make your day better today? And one of the things I write down, which I've shared this on the podcast, is 30 minutes of active play with my kids. Which I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but to me, active play is like phone is away. I'm out there playing t-ball with Hudson in the front yard. I'm swimming in the pool with Ella in the backyard, and 30 minutes turns into 60 or 90 minutes. But it's 30 minutes is enough for me to break the habit away from the connection to my phone and work and stuff. So that's like a thing I'm trying to be proactive about. But maybe it's presence. But do you not? Do you see it differently?
No, I don't. I say the same thing. I wrote down focus, presence, flexibility, consistency, measurement, and also grace. Because I think it's funny how we'll give ourselves grace. Hey, I get points for just showing up today. I get points. Well, I didn't do my hour workout because I had too many calls, but at least I squoze in 30 minutes. Or no, I didn't get to do chest today, but I got abs done. Whereas with work, I'm like, oh man, I was 5 minutes late to the call and I felt like people were kind of upset with me, or, oh, whatever, all our jobs are different. I don't want to just make it all my personal examples, but everybody, we don't give ourselves the grace. So focus, presence, focus/presence, because I think they're sort of different, sort of the same. Flexibility, consistency, measurement, and grace. And when I say measurement, I mean something that makes a workout feel successful. We don't realize we're doing it, but it's, oh, I did 5 more pounds on that. Or, oh, I did an extra set. Or, oh, last time when I did crunches, my muscles cramped and I can only do 2 sets. Today I did 3 sets. Whereas I don't know if in our work day or in our life day or our relationship day, if we ever give ourselves that measurement where you just did with what you said, 30 minutes of active play. I think it's the active play, but it's also committing to the time to do it. Because if you just said, I'm going to walk in my kid's room and throw the ball at Hudson and he'll throw it back. I go, okay, bro, that was fun. That's fine, but you didn't do a measurable amount of it. So it's kind of giving ourselves that. I just find that interesting that both of us answered the same. Like both of us feel not a lot of percentage of days where I feel like I crushed it as a person. But yeah, no, my workouts, I'd say I'm probably close to 70%, maybe 65, 70, which is pretty good. Just because I'm kind of hard on myself, and as I'm getting older, it's getting harder because everything hurts. But I'm like, damn, all right, and I think for me, when you're an older guy or an older woman, I think sometimes you start to compare yourself to what's the word just went out of my head? What does it mean? Like your circle, your cohort. You compare yourself to your cohort, and I look around at other 57-year-old dudes, and with the exceptions of the ones that maybe are on some kind of enhancement, I feel like I'm doing pretty good. I'm not where I'd want to be. So I give myself grace there.
I was literally going to say that speaks to you giving yourself grace. That's crazy that you said that. I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. So we're reading this book as a company at CandorPath right now, which I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality. And I know you're probably like, what does this have to do with what we're talking about? Well, there's a quote in the book that I wrote down that I really liked. And the quote was it was for the context of giving this really good hospitable experience to your clients or your customers, or, in the business that you're in. And it was, make the charitable assumption. And what that means is it was kind of like a reminder to assume the best of people, especially when they're not behaving well, not just all the time, but especially when you don't have a good interaction with somebody. And so, for instance, like this happened yesterday, I held the door open for a guy. I was walking out, he was walking in, and it was one of those, we were at a friend's beach condo. So it required like a code to scan in, and he had his hands full. And so I held the door open for him because I'm like, this is a nice gesture. I was like, hey man, how's it going today? And he literally just looks right through my soul and walks by. Doesn't even say hi, doesn't say thank you, doesn't reply to what I asked him, which is, hey, how's it going? And I'm
Weird.
like, my instant thought was like, lots of curse words in my head. I was like, F this guy, what a jerk. And then I remembered what I read in this book and what we were like preaching as a team. And make the charitable assumption, like this guy's spouse could have died. This guy could have just gotten a phone call about, his son was in an accident. I started kind of going that way. And I'm like, all right, let's give this guy grace. Like he wasn't very nice to me, but what do I care? What am I going to let this like minor interaction ruin my day? And maybe we need to make the charitable assumption for ourselves. We're pretty hard on ourselves. And I think a lot of people listening to this podcast are pretty hard on themselves. And I think the context of what we've been talking about for the last 10 or 15 minutes or so is trying to identify that. And I like giving ourselves the space to have some grace. And anyway, making the charitable assumption. That's kind of the thing.
And we would want, I love that. And we would want people to make the charitable assumption for us too. I can give you an example. Yeah. One time I was at a conference and I had an MRI because I had kidney stones, and my phone rings and it's my urologist, which you don't ever want your cell phone to be like a doctor calling you. Yeah. So I picked up my phone, and I was in a public conference, and I had just been speaking and whatever, but I was out in the open, but kind of off to the side. And he said, hey man, I don't want you to worry because I know you. So I'm just saying this right. Don't worry. But on your MRI, we saw a spot on your liver. So I just want to have another guy look at it. And when you get back in town, no emergency, I want to do it again. And I said, what's the percentage chance that it could be cancer? He was quiet and he goes, well, I can never tell you 0%, but I think it's low, but it's something we want to look at, but please don't worry about it. Okay. So that happened, right? Get home, blah, 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 do the MRI. It's nothing. It was not a bruise on your liver, but like a little blood bubble, nothing big, right? Flash forward a year later, I'm at another conference and I'm signing books, and I had just spoken and it went great. I got a standing ovation. There's about 1,100 people. And afterwards, it was one of those moments as a speaker that you have that's really cool. You finish speaking and you come out and there's 40 people standing there waiting to talk to me, have me sign books, take pictures with me. And I'm talking and I'm taking pictures. And this one woman says to me, I'm so glad I got to talk to you, and you're so nice. And it's such a different experience than I had with you last time I met you. And I just said it and I felt sick. I go, I'm sorry. She goes, it's no big deal. I'm sure you were just occupied, but about several months ago, a year ago, I was at a conference and I walked up to you to take a picture with you, and you were on the phone and talking to somebody, and I said hi, and you just walked right past me like I wasn't there. And I just realized that I thought to myself, maybe something's going on with him because I've met him before. He's super nice. And, you're such a sweet guy. And I just thought it was weird. And now I see you. And then I realized that was when I had just gotten the call from my doctor. And thankfully she did give me some grace, but she took it enough to say to me, oh, this was a better experience than I had with you last time I met you. And I've seen her at a couple of other conferences since then. And I actually told her, not that time, but the next time we talked, I go, and I just I didn't feel comfortable, but I've been around you. I've been spoken at your organization. That day, this is what happened. And she goes, at first I was like a little put off, but I thought that's not like him. So I had the grace that she kind of had an impression of me. But it was funny because much like the guy that didn't say thank you to you, I was that guy, and I had just had a doctor tell me, saw a spot on your liver. So it would be very hard to turn and go, hey, how are you? Yeah. So she sort of made the charitable assumption, but that's a great lesson because we've all been the one that needs to make the charitable assumption. And we've all been the one that we wish somebody would make the charitable assumption. So yeah. I love that point. And I mean, as kind of a wrap up with this, I think when it comes to risk, regret, resilience, those are the things that we have to either get better at, face, address, define, work through, and incorporate to be able to be successful at anything, successful at social media, successful at being a chef, successful at finances, successful at relationships or parenting. You
Mhm.
know, everything involves risk. Everything involves risk. Everything that we want to accomplish, there's going to be a sense of risk. Regret is not helpful unless you turn the things that you feel bad about into lessons. And the way
Yeah.
that you do that is you talk through them either in therapy or with a friend, or you journal it. You know, I wish I would have done this. You know, you just shared how, you know, I regret that we didn't do this sooner, but you realize that maybe if you would have done it sooner, you guys would have failed because you
Yeah.
didn't know what you didn't know and you didn't have the experience maybe.
Well, and that's what I would define as calculated risk. I think that's an important distinction, because if like you and me just decide to go like cave diving tomorrow, that's
Nope.
probably, we know nothing about that. We don't know how to, you think about all the things you have to do to properly cave dive and anchor yourself in. And I don't even know if that's right, but we don't know how to do that. We're not going to just
No.
go do that.
Or if
Calculated risk.
one of your clients said, "Hey, I'm cashing out all my retirement and I'm going all in on silver because I just saw a commercial that
Yeah.
said silver is the future." You know,
Right.
whatever. I'm not saying silver is a bad investment. I'm just saying you'd be like, "No,
Well,
no."
that's a really good point. That's not calculated risk.
Yeah.
That is just the word I'm
Cave
looking
diving.
for. What's
Cave
that?
diving with your money. Cave
Cave
diving with
dive.
your money.
Yeah. It's
I'm going to
just
take
this
all my money out and go cave diving with it. Let's just put
right.
them together.
Risk for the
It's bad.
sake of risk
Right.
is not valuable. Calculated risk in the context of what we're talking about, I think is useful. And again, I like, you know, not that I think we all have regrets, but I think calculated risks help turn them into micro regrets instead of this big, like, you don't want your whole life story to be like this one moment that I swung and missed and didn't do the thing I was supposed to do, because that's just
Yeah.
unfair pressure on yourself. This is
Well,
not
and I
fair.
think your point about micro regrets, I think, is a really cool thing. We could probably do a whole podcast. I think we should on micro regrets, because we always talk about the big regrets. Oh, I wish I would have gone to this
Yeah.
school, or I wish I wouldn't have married this person, or I wish I would have. But what about the little day-to-day things? Like,
Yeah.
I can remember getting into a car accident and thinking, had I gone to Publix first, I wouldn't have gotten into this accident. It's a
Yeah.
micro regret. Nothing happened.
It's
I didn't get hurt. My car
no,
just
but
had minor damage. It was, you know, I paid my deductible. It got fixed in 2 weeks, but I had a rental car that was actually nicer than my car. And I remember going, you guys why don't you just take your time? I love this car, you know, but
right.
you know, I think those little micro regrets are the ones that, what is it, like death by 1,000 paper cuts, right?
It adds
So
up.
it's,
Well, that's what
yeah,
I wanted to share with you, and I think I already did essentially, but it's just like, I don't think I have these major glaring painful regrets in life, and that I look back on. And if I have had those, and I've been able to like think through those, work through those, and as time has gone on, I can almost with a new perspective look back on it and go, that happened exactly the way God intended that to happen.
yes, it
But then
did. And you know, yep,
I do
yep.
have a lot of these micro regrets throughout my day where I'm like, dang it, like I should have said this in that, you know, in the heat of a conversation. Like, had I said this, it would have landed differently, or I should have done this, or I should have gotten up today and worked out, or I should have spent more time with my kids, or I should have. Those micro regrets do stack up on you and can weigh on your psyche. It does for me, for sure. So
I think
anyway,
they
I don't know.
drain
I think
that.
a lot of,
No,
yeah,
I actually think there's a lot. Again, I think that's a whole topic all by itself, micro regrets. But I just think, you know, this was a topic that I thought would be really cool to talk about. I think when you look at risk, regret, resilience, if we just went into, if this was a 100% financial podcast, we could talk about risk, regret, and resilience, couldn't we? If this was a 100% fitness podcast, we could talk about risk, regret. I mean, these 3 R's are things that people need to deal with, to think about. And hopefully in this conversation, I hope that we've given our listeners a couple of things to reflect on. But at the end of the day, you know what? You're just like those micro regrets. What if we shifted into moments of micro gratitude, or moments of micro euphoria, or moments of micro joy, or moments of micro charity? You know, it's giving a little extra tip to that server. It didn't break the bank. You're not going to end up on YouTube because you didn't give them a $10,000 tip. You gave them 30% instead of 20%. It was $9 more, but it made a difference for them. Or, you know, telling your significant other how good they look today, or how much you
yeah,
appreciate them. These are little micro things that you can do. Micro gratitude. I'm
But that's the
grateful.
resilience piece. That's the to
Yeah.
have micro gratitude, to replace micro regret with micro gratitude, or to
Yeah.
recognize, to have enough awareness to go, I regret and I don't like how that went, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to do that again differently next time. I'm grateful for that mental shift, man. That takes work
Yeah.
because you're right. People
Especially
are
when you're going through,
skewed
yeah, it
negative.
does.
Like
Well,
it's our
yeah.
predisposition to be
Yep.
negative and lazy. Like those are our
Yeah.
predispositions as
Yeah.
humans to be
We
those
want
two things.
comfort. We're
Yeah.
like wired like from caveman times.
Yes.
We wanted a cool cave. Now we want a close parking spot.
Yeah.
Like it's the end of the world when we don't have a really strong Wi-Fi signal.
Right.
I'm going through all the stuff that I'm going through with Luke, my son who had surgery, and the recovery has been a little tough. But what we've done is we've spent time talking about where are the micro gratitudes in this, and the micro gratitude is, this happened in the summer rather than during the school year, which he has a very difficult, challenging school. He does all honors classes and, AP classes. We micro gratitude that even though he started having some of the medical issues before our recent big vacation, he was able to get through it. And yeah, we had to cut out some excursions because he wasn't feeling well, but 85% of the trip for him was amazing. And I told him, I said, if we would have gotten this diagnosed beforehand, while maybe we could have gotten it addressed a little sooner and maybe your recovery would have been like 10% better, we would have had to cancel that trip. So we would have had no trip and your whole summer would have been. And so even in that, I've been trying to help him with this big, it's been, the first week was probably, I would tell you guys, that first week was one of the most difficult weeks of my life with this post-surgical stuff, my life. And I've been through some crap, and this was hard. My wife's lost it. He's lost it. I have not, but I definitely was struggling. And I kept on putting my focus on the micro gratitude. My wife and I are both nurses. We talked about this with his recovery, non-medical people would not have been able to deal with some of the stuff. So there's all these little micro gratitudes, and now we're over that hump and his pain is manageable and he's getting better and he's healing pretty decently. So yeah, man, even if you're going through it right now, and it's not to minimize anybody's struggle, but find that micro gratitude, because I do think, Johnny, I think you had just said, that's then where the resilience comes in. And resilience isn't shut up, pick yourself up and keep going, stop complaining. Resilience is, I just got stronger because of this load, this challenge that I put on myself. And look at me, I'm going through it. I went through this divorce. I went through this bankruptcy. I went through this struggle. I went through this illness, and look at me now. So I believe that if you're listening to this, you've gone through something and you've gotten through it. I believe you have. Maybe not the thing you're going through now, but if you look back on your life, you've gone through something and you got through it and you got stronger for it, and good for you. And we're proud of you for it.
I appreciate that you said that. And the point that you made about, it's not just shut up, pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Bad things happen to good people. Like those platitudes. Oh my God. There's a term for this. I forget what it's like, but it's like this like negative advice that people give where it doesn't feel good to hear. It doesn't make you feel better. And it's not good advice to hear, frankly, in my opinion.
It's not. But speaking of good advice to hear, I hope some of this was good advice to hear. And
always is, buddy.
We're glad that we could record 50 minutes of our own therapy session. So, and you know what? There's my right to bear arms. That should be the cover of our podcast thing. I'm going to come over and get that. I'm going to come over to your house. You have a call up this. I'm coming over right now. But I just want to, I'll sing us out if that's okay. I'll bring you home. I just want to thank you all. We took a risk even wanting to do this podcast with our busy schedules, but there was just a commentary and a voice that we wanted to bring out and to be able to reach people and to make a difference. We don't regret it at all. This has been a great journey so far and continues. And if anything, we've learned from this experience to be able to bounce back from, when we first started the podcast, it took off and it just got really big real quick and then kind of settled down because we got really busy. And that's helped us get some resilience and just stick to it. So we're glad for everybody who's listened to us from the beginning. Thank you for being here. If you're a new listener, thank you for being here. If you haven't before, please, this podcast, please, throw us some good comments and share it with somebody you think might get something out of it, because we're all about that. We're just trying to make a little dent in the pond, a little pebble in the pond that ripples into your world. So on behalf of John and Matt and I and all of us that are part of the Above Board podcast, we thank you for being here, and we look forward to chatting with you again in the future. Until then, just remember, you're awesome.